Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 14 four key game picks of the 2020 NFL season. There, there a lot of things happened in Week 13. I will not get to everything. I'll try to skim through as I bring up the discussions of things that happened in Week 13. Don't forget to check the text on the fly for the current standings of the AFC 1 through 7 seeds and the NFC 1 through 7 seeds as well. Anyways, a lot things went happen in Week 13, and I gotta mention a couple things here. The Pittsburgh Steelers finally lose a football game, so you know what that means to those who are fans of the Miami Dolphins, especially those that have lived to see the 72 Dolphins with their perfect season. Another toast, another year. Whoever's still alive from that 72 Dolphins team can basically they could drink some champagne again, blah, blah, blah. But going back to Pittsburgh, they really, really struggled against the Washington football team. And obviously, this football team, they're making some noise in the NFC East. Them and the Giants as well. Now, remember, the Giants also won against the Seahawks in another enormous upset. But obviously, the biggest upset of the weekend definitely was Washington beating the Pittsburgh Steelers here. Now, I will say this, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I will say this right now. It's better to lose now than to say if you were undefeated going 16-0 and then going into the postseason, and what if you lose your first game in the postseason after being undefeated in the regular season? That would be more humiliating. I would say this, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, it's better to get rid of the undefeated talk, lose a game now, and just focus, for Pittsburgh Steelers fans, just focus on the Super Bowl because that's what's more important right now for that football team. But at the same time, too, there's a lot of questions going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger couldn't have played a better game. He threw passes, but yet his wide receivers dropped them. Easy catches that should have been made. I just don't understand how Pittsburgh really just played terribly offensively, and then their defense wasn't any better, letting Washington win. But it is what it is. And of course, as I mentioned, the Giants also beating the Seahawks in another upset. Seahawks are now, or the Rams are now tied, I should say they're now in first place again. Boy, the NFC West is going back and forth between the Seahawks and the Rams. And speaking of the Rams, they'll be one of the key games I'll talk about. Obviously, the Bills and the Browns have made statements. Now, I know the Browns actually got into a closer game than expected in the fourth quarter. I don't know where their defense was letting the Titans come in because they dominated that football game against the Titans. And this is coming at a time, I don't know if you want that. You let the defense is pretty much almost letting another team come back. Especially now that the Browns have a big game coming up against the Ravens. That's another game I'm going to talk about in a few minutes when I talk about my key games here. And yeah, the only other consistency I see right now, still the Packers are on a roll, but then again, they do have the Packers are one team right now I could consider maybe now they're starting to come together. And now, if I'm the NFC, I would be taking notice right now, especially the New Orleans Saints. Remember, the Packers are only one game back of that number one seed, and they own the tiebreaker against the Saints because they did beat them earlier in the season. So this is going to be quite interesting down the stretch for a lot of these football teams as they're jockeying for position for the playoffs. Alrighty, now look, there's a lot of things I could talk about. Obviously, another one is in terms of talking about the Eagles here. Yeah, Jalen Hurts is going to get the start. Doug Peterson has benched Carson Wentz. I'm not surprised by that. The Ravens destroying the Cowboys. There are a lot of questions. The Cowboys are a mess right now, and you should read what Troy Aikman during that broadcast in that Ravens-Cowboys game. He really just talked trash about the Cowboys. But then again, what do you expect? He's being honest. Let's be real here. All right, let's talk about Week 14 now, shall we? Now, there are 6 games that I wish I had time to talk about, but as I keep within my theme of my video, and that's 4, I will make 2 honorable mentions after I talk about these 4 key games here. All right. Let's begin with key game number 1. That is the New England Patriots versus the LA Rams. The Rams are actually favored in this game at 5.5. That number probably might go down much lower. Don't be surprised by that. Now, New England coming off, they completely dismantled the Chargers last week. And look at Newton's stats. Really, the Patriots defense was really the factor here in beating the... Well, then again, the Chargers are horrible this year. Don't get me started because I do follow the Chargers out of all the teams in the NFL. Don't get me started, please. Get a load of Newton's stats in that game against the Chargers. He only went 12 of 19, 69 yards, and 1 touchdown. The Patriots' running game and their defense and special teams basically put up the offense more than Newton did. Now, the Rams and Goff, after a big win last week against the Cardinals, Goff wins 37 of 47, 351 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. And that turnover ratio was huge last week for the Rams, and just to make sure, because they completely dominated the Cardinals last week, and now this is one of their toughest tests now to maintain first place right now. They have the Patriots here. I look at it here for this game. Now, the Patriots are going to see the Rams defense. Let's see how they do with another mobile quarterback in Cam Newton. Now, the Patriots are starting again on a roll, and right now they're currently 10th. They're currently 10th in the AFC standings right now, trying to vie for at least the 7th seed in the AFC. So right now it's going to be hard to say right now down the stretch. The Patriots do have an easy schedule the rest of the way. Probably, I think they do have one tough. This is probably maybe the only one of the remaining toughest games yet on their schedule. I look at it from a standpoint now. The New England offense just needs to keep that ball rolling if they want to beat the Rams here. But when I look at it this way for the Rams, this is a game I think is more important to the Rams as much as the Patriots here, because obviously first place is on the line in the NFC West, because Seattle, they got an easy game. They got the Jets, and they know Seattle's going to win that game. Tough to say here. Rams, the defense has really got to get to Cam Newton. They really got to put pressure on him in order to really halt the New England offense here. I expect this to be a good football game. It might go back and forth here. A lot of it's going to determine on the defenses for both these two teams. Can the Rams defense get to Cam Newton? Can the New England defense really do a number on the Rams and put a stop to Goff and force him to pass and stop the run? It is a tough pick here. This game could go either way. The lines currently have the Rams at 5.5. That number will definitely be lower. Tough pick here. This is a pick. You got to treat this with caution here because this game could go either way. I'm actually going to pick the Rams in this game because I just think the Rams defense is going to come up big in this football game. Expect this to be a very close competitive football game in this one here. But I'm going to go with the Rams here. I think the Rams will barely squeak out a victory against the Patriots here. The Rams are really their only other remaining schedule, their only toughest opponent going down the stretch here. I like the Rams in this one here. It's going to be a close football game, but that's why I'm going to go with the Rams at 5.5. Rams over the Patriots. Key game number 2, the Minnesota Vikings versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Cousins went 28 of 43, 305 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception in a very competitive game that shouldn't have been competitive because they were playing the Jaguars. It took to overtime in order for them to beat the Jaguars. Now, the Buccaneers had a bye week last week, so these are stats from week number 12. Brady went 27 of 41, 345 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. That 2 interceptions really hurt them against the Chiefs, as that was their last opponent. Now, currently the Buccaneers are a 6.5 point favorite in this one here. That number will probably go to 6, maybe 5.5. But really, I look at it from a standpoint here. The reason why I'm talking about the Vikings here is because right now they're barely clinging on to that last playoff spot. And this is a game they got to hold on to because Arizona is right behind them. And don't be surprised if that's really their only other opponent that the Vikings have to worry about, and that's Arizona. Arizona's the number is currently 1 game behind the Vikings in that last playoff spot. I look at both these teams need this game right now. Tampa Bay is currently the 6th seed at the moment here. I look at it from a standpoint here. The Buccaneers offense really has to be flawless in this game. They got to really, really get points in this game here. They got to forget the problems right now. They got to really take one game at a time here because there's a lot. I mean, this team's had high expectations all season long, and yet they've been a disappointment. Now, for the Vikings here, obviously they're trying to hang on that last playoff spot here. Their offense too. They have got to be flawless and really play good football against this Tampa Bay team. But I look at it from, if I had to pick in this game, this is another tough game to pick here. But I'm going to go with the Buccaneers for a couple of things. I think that Brady will get that offense going. Obviously, he knows that Buccaneers team needed a week to rest. They didn't have that bye week until last week. I think they will be recharged in this one here. I think the Vikings are going to hit a wall here against this Buccaneer team. It should be a good football game. Remember, this game, I expect this game to be close. But I think the Buccaneers will be back on track here. I think that Brady will get that offense going again. And I'd see the Buccaneers barely squeaking out a victory against the Vikings here. I'm going to go with the Buccaneers here. I think they'll barely beat the Vikings. It should be a good football game here. I will pick the Buccaneers at -6.5, and that's my pick in this one here, the Buccaneers over the Vikings. Key game number 3, going back into the AFC. Another big one here. It is the Indianapolis Colts versus the Vegas Raiders. The Colts currently are a 3-point favorite in this one here. Don't be surprised if that number goes down to 2.5, maybe 2 by kickoff. Rivers last week in barely winning against the Texans, 27-35, 285 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Now Derek Carr and the Raiders had to come from behind against the Jets. Out of all teams, they almost lost to the Jets, but they won on a miracle. On the last second on that game. Carr went 28 of 47, 381 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Rivers, for many years in the AFC West, if there's one team he's always struggled with, it's been the Raiders. I look at it from a standpoint here. This is a game that, for Phillip Rivers, he's got to make a statement against the Raiders here because the Raiders have been a thorn for Rivers for a long time. It didn't even during the years when the Raiders weren't that good. He's always struggled against the Raiders. It don't matter what players were on the Raiders for all those years in the AFC West. When he was with the Chargers. Now Carr and that Raiders team has got to perform much better than they did against the Jets. They know that the Colts and the Dolphins are probably their only 2 remaining opponents that's left in their schedule, and really the Raiders' schedule the rest of the way is pretty favorable. But they know that they have to beat the Colts, and they still have the Dolphins coming up as well. Those are 2 games that really are going to make the difference if the Raiders do make the postseason or not. So this game is tough this is another tough pick here. This is a pick you got to treat this with caution here. This could go either way. I expect this to be a very competitive football game between these 2 teams. But I'm going to go with the Colts. I think finally Phillip Rivers will make a statement in this game. I think to me that the Colts offense will perform much better than they did against the Texans, and I think that Colts defense will definitely be a factor here. They got to get to Carr in this game. The Raiders defense wise, they're still having issues, and they're making David Carr win football games for them if their defense can't hold up. And I'm going to pick the Colts here. I think to me it'll be another squeaker in this one here. I think the Colts win this one here. I'll take the Colts at -3 here. Colts over the Raiders. And finally, key game number 4. It is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cleveland Browns. The Ravens are a 1.5 point favorite in this one here. Don't be surprised if that number actually goes to 1. Now, Lamar Jackson, 12 of 17, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And part of those offense here, he had 94 yards of rushing. His passing, he didn't even pass the ball that much. 94 of those 107 yards were running. So you don't be surprised that if I could see Lamar Jackson having another big game against the Browns. Now, they've already beaten the Browns back in week 1. Now for Mayfield, he went 25 of 33, 334 yards, 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. He has got to perform like this again against the Ravens here if they want to make another statement here. Now look, the Browns are in pretty good shape right now. They're currently the 5th seed. But looking at their remaining games, the Ravens, this one's a tough one here, and they still have to play the Steelers one more time. But then again, that's in week 17. Who knows if Pittsburgh will play all their starters. But Cleveland really has, I personally think Cleveland's got to win out. If they lose maybe 2 games, that could be danger for them, even though they have a good record. You keep in mind that the Raiders, the Ravens, and the Patriots are still vying for jockeying for position here. I look at it from a standpoint here for between these two teams right now. Both offenses have got to perform well. I expect this game to go back and forth here, but I look at it from a standpoint here. I'm going to pick the Ravens here for a couple things. Lamar Jackson, and they know their season's in jeopardy if they lose this football game. They pretty much could kiss the playoffs goodbye if they lose against the Browns here. But I think that the Ravens will be more prepared for this game here because they know the Browns are tough. I think to me, Cleveland's going to struggle in this game if they can't stop the run against the Ravens, because that was one of the things that killed them in week 1 was the Ravens rushing. And that is what I'm going to go with here in this football game here. I'm going to pick the Ravens at -1.5 here. This should be a good one here. Ravens over the Browns. There were 2 honorable games I mentioned here that like I said, there were 6 games I would have wished I talked about. First, one of them was the Cardinals and Giants. I think the Cardinals will stop the Giants here. I think Murray and that Arizona offense here, they know that they know that their season is on the line if they don't win this football game. And also the other game was the Steelers and the Bills. I think the Steelers they got to make a statement here. I think they will make the statement against the Bills in this one here. I think it should be a close game here, but I think the Steelers will have a say, and I think they'll beat the Bills in that one here. Those are the 2 honorable games here that I mentioned here in that. And that's pretty much it, everybody. That's it for my picks for week number 14. Keep in mind, all my picks are in the description below. I'll talk to you guys later. This video is already long enough as it is. I'll talk to you guys next week. Take care and enjoy your football weekend.